Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to catch up with the latest avalanche, really, of corruption cases involving Conservative MPs, some of which may even warrant criminal investigations as the fallout from Boris Johnson's attempts to excuse one of his MPs of corruption has caused the entire rotten barrel to spill out in public. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. Now, this would normally be the slot for Prime Minister's questions, but Boris Johnson is dodging the questions better than usual this week by not having the session at all. So I may as well cover what the main topic inevitably would have been, the old Tory corruption. So a couple of things to start off with, really, before I go over the various branches of this corruption scandal that have emerged. The first thing is that many of the scandals now emerging could have been known and reported about before now. Indeed, many were, but not so much by the mainstream media. Much has been made of the fact that the Byline Times was reporting some of these examples of corruption months ago, and some years ago, which have only made it onto the pages of more famous media outlets recently. Some of the cases that are coming up now have been reported in years past, but they just didn't break through into the public's interest. The reason it's all coming out now is because of the Conservatives' ill-judged moves to abolish the committee which polices MPs' behaviour in order to save one Tory MP. Though whether that one Tory MP was Owen Paterson or Boris Johnson is up for debate. See, that's what people don't like. People seem to let corruption go by the by. It's disappointing, but it's just the way it is. But when it comes down to MPs refusing to follow the rules or accept their punishment for disobeying the rules that everyone else would have to, that's different. The public don't like that. And all of these other Conservative MPs that are now under the spotlight for their extracurricular activities, some of which are permitted, but probably inadvisable, some of which appear to actually be against the rules, but all of them are facing scrutiny now because their boss couldn't leave well alone. The second thing to point out is more of a question of terminology. Now, you may come across the term Tory sleaze relating to this corruption. Keir Starmer of Labour has repeatedly said that this should be called out for what it is, corruption. Various commentators have gone as far as to say that we shouldn't be calling it sleaze, we should just call it corruption. The argument being that sleaze makes it sound less serious. But another argument is that the reverse is true. Like, first of all, it is sleaze. The definition of sleaze is immoral or corrupt. The term is quite accurate. And far from making it sound less serious, the purpose of using the term is to hark back to the 1990s, where the Cash for Questions scandal was labelled Tory sleaze. The Conservatives lost the election following that scandal, and there are those who wish to see a repeat of it. The aim is to show the public that the Tories are back up to their old tricks again, if indeed they ever stopped. So using the term sleaze may sound less severe than corruption to some, but arguably ramps up the seriousness to others. So I would say use whatever term you think best. They're both accurate and in this case interchangeable. But in terms of the new details emerging, I say new details thrust into the public spotlight, there are three quite serious ones. The first is the news that almost every single Conservative treasurer since the party came to power in 2010, so this precedes Boris Johnson, has donated at least £3 million to the party. Collectively, these 15 treasurers have donated about £54 million, I think. But in each case, it's at least £3 million to the party. And then they were made a lord. A few days ago, there were reports that the Conservative Party has had 16 treasurers since 2010. That sounds like a lot. 15 of whom have been elevated to the House of Lords. Now, in itself, that would be bad enough. It's a bit like, oh, you take on this job and then you get a lordship out of it? No. But these things happen. Like, peerages can often be party political. Shouldn't be. And you're really not supposed to send people to the House of Lords for services explicitly to your party. You're at least supposed to pretend they've done some good for the country. But it's worse than that in this case, because the other link is that these treasurers, who were not exactly in the role for very long, 16 of them in 11 years, is that they all personally donated a minimum of £3 million to the Conservative Party in that position. Now, when this has happened with 15 of them in the last 11 years, then as circumstantial as you might argue the evidence is, there's a bit of a clear link to investigate here. The scam appears to be, if you want a seat in the House of Lords, pay us £3 million, you'll be the party treasurer for a few months, donate £3 million, then step down after a discreet period, you can order your ermine coat. Pete Wishart, the SNP's leader of the House, has written to the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick, to request an investigation into the affair. This is a cash for honours scenario and potentially criminal offences have been committed. Now, let's be clear. We can't expect anything to come of this. Both the Metropolitan Police and the National Crime Agency have been nobbled some time ago. They have been refusing to carry out criminal investigations into senior Conservatives for the past few years now. Police Commissioner Cressida Dick is absolutely tied to the government. She has already sold her soul to protect them from criminal investigations, and they in return have saved her career when she's been under pressure to stand down over a number of terrible policing operations. But the request comes from an MP and will have to be taken seriously. It will mean that senior police officers are going to have to personally intervene to make sure the investigation goes nowhere. This can be then added to the pile of investigations into the Metropolitan Police in the future once this government falls and law and order are again re-established here. The second scandal centres around Geoffrey Cox, the Attorney General under Theresa May, who was last year undertaking work in a foreign tax haven. Lovely old time in the Caribbean, I think. British Virgin Islands. There are several layers of bad here. The first is that while more serious MPs were in their constituencies, helping their communities deal with the impact of the pandemic as well as the normal caseload, he was thousands of miles away, earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. It's all very well saying that he was voting, I was still doing my job as an MP, I was voting remotely. Voting is not the main workload of an MP. In fact, most MPs, voting's not their work at all. Because your party leadership tells you how to vote, you're expected not to even think about it. Vote this way. The main work of an MP is dealing with their constituency caseload. And he was doing none of that. Imagine you telling your boss that you're not going to be coming into work for the next month or so because you're moonlighting in a better paid job, but not to worry because you'll still log into the odd meeting remotely when you can be bothered. But just as with the cash for honours scandal, this one is also worse than first appears because two reasons. First, his job was advising people in a tax haven how to avoid paying taxes to the UK Treasury. So a British MP on the government side of the House was being paid to help others diddle the UK Treasury out of taxes. Doesn't matter whether it's legal or not. That is the opposite of what a sitting MP should be doing. They should not be advising people on how to rob the public purse. You know, this thing about MPs and their second jobs. Now, there are some where you can argue it would be fine, so to speak. You know, people have mentioned that some MPs are medics and do some work on the wards. Nobody objects to that, as long as they're still managing their constituency caseload. Some work as lawyers on the side. It's a bit dodgy, and Labour have sort of said that shouldn't happen either. I mean, Starmer, for example, has worked as an MP and has done legal work as well. Some of it unpaid, like he continued to advocate against the death penalty around the world. Not a paid position, but the money is neither here nor there. He has done paid legal work as well. What you're not supposed to be doing is using your position as an MP to corruptly benefit private interests. You know, and that's why really I've made the argument recently, I think others are starting to, we should just get rid of everything. Even the jobs that sound all right, if you just get rid of all of them, there's no grey area. You know, when there is a problem, definitely a problem, is if the work is in direct conflict with the way an MP should be acting. If the work is not a service to the people, but to private business interests, that's where the problem is. Another layer of dodginess concerning Cox is the question as to who paid for it exactly. You would say, Cox was paid by the British Virgin Islands government. Well, that's fine, okay, fine. Where did the money come from there? Because it's not a country. It's not a normal government. Like with most governments, they get their money from tax revenues. They raise taxes. That's not what happens in the British Virgin Islands. They don't raise taxes. They're basically a business. So the money they spend comes from business interests. So which business or group of businesses was paying Cox? That's important to know as well. Cox may well have declared his income, though declaring it doesn't make it all right. But it's not clear exactly where that money has come from. I gather that Cox is now going to be investigated by the Standards Committee, not because of what I've just said here, but actually because he also appears, not proven, to have used his House of Commons office to carry out that private work. Now that is not permitted because that office is paid for by the taxpayer. And then the final corruption scandal emerging since last week, and this is genuinely since last week, and this is genuinely something that is Boris Johnson. And it's not denied by the Conservatives. It was reported in the Financial Times, first of all, I think, that Boris Johnson threatened to withdraw funding from the constituencies of any Tory MP who did not vote for the motion last week to abolish the Standards Committee. Which shows a couple of things. Firstly, that such a threat had to be issued means that Johnson was going to lose the vote. Remember that he only won by 18 votes. If a significant number more had even abstained, never mind voted against it, he would have lost. I mean, he lost anyway, but only because of public outrage. That forces the U-turn. There is to be another vote next week to actually overturn last week's vote. But the second thing it shows, as if we needed further proof, is that Johnson does not allocate public funds according to where he thinks it needs to be spent to the benefit of the country within his political beliefs. Normally you sort of get, Labour will spend public money this way because that fits in with their political beliefs. The Conservatives spend it a different way because that fits theirs. That's not what happens with Boris Johnson, and this has shown it again. He considers the public purse to be his personal possession, and he can do as he likes with it. It was bad enough spending so-called levelling up money in Conservative areas only. Because all this money, we're going to level up the country. Where are you going to level up? Well, we're going to, in here. Oh, so you mean Conservative areas. But to threaten to withdraw that funding if MPs don't vote the way you tell them is treating that money as your own. The stench of corruption coming out of this is now that the Patterson affair is unstopped it, is overwhelming. And it could easily run and run. Who even believes that we've heard the worst of it? We may well find that there's another crop of scandals being served up by the Sunday newspapers this weekend. Which probably makes the Brexit trade war more likely, because if Boris Johnson does start to come under sustained pressure, he isn't half going to need a big distraction. Going to a hospital without a face mask won't hide this lot. But one final point to make. Although Johnson will deservedly take the blame for presiding over this mess, we need to remember that he didn't orchestrate it, apart from that last one. He wanted the vote last week, and he has been involved in examples of corruption himself. But what we have here are examples of Tory corruption going right back to 2010, when he wasn't even an MP, and involving lots of Conservative politicians, not just 2 or 3 bad apples. In other words, even if the party drops Johnson, the taint of corruption doesn't leave with him, because so many Tory MPs are all mired in this sleaze, all individually, and it's all going to be feeding this scandal. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.